Killian's head swam. The weeks of cramped conditions, meagre meals of charred meat, and racking electrical shocks had left him a shell, staring with hollow eyes at nothing in particular as the small bird aliens chirruped around him. He allowed them to lift his limp, weak arms with some difficulty on their side. 3 of those aliens were darting around, cleaning his wounds and making measurements, their rapid hopping movements blurred at the edges of his half-focused vision. He'd never been this hungry in his life, a gnawing, draining tug which gripped his whole body from the core. His desperate scrambles for food during his captivity had driven him into an animalistic state of hunt and consume. Some small part of his mind played with that state once more. His eyes began to focus, his head turned, following one of the aliens as it bobbed around his body. Swish! The small side door to the medical room swung open, and 4 of the birds entered. A small metal tray, hefted between them on sticks they slung across their backs with obvious exertion. A steaming dish of some kind of porridge sat, in all its glory, upon that tray. Its aroma caught Killian's nostrils with spiced, fruity notes and a heavy undertone of carbs. The animal that had begun to coil in his mind, contemplating striking out at the doctor, now unleashed itself. Within seconds the bowl clanged to the ground, bare, and Killian sat back, happily licking the remnants of porridge from his sticky hands. The Beebody staff were pressed to the edges of the room, staring silently, in shock. Commissioner Seek settled back into their cushioned transport perch. Red, nest-like, and plump, they weren't used to this sort of finery. It distracted them for a moment from their destination. Chu-1, the capital planet, and Seek was destined for the crowning superstructure that adorned its northern magnetic pole. Ever since they'd discarded their personal self for bureaucratic and military service, this was the goal. This was why so many Beebody gave up their chance for family and a normal life, the prospect of joining the Sage class on Chu-1. But Seek was not joining. They were simply a witness. The sharp eyes of the council that had deliberated on the human question for these past months. In the next 100 hours, the council would make their final proclamation on whether to allow passage. Some hushed rumours even suggested they were considering allowing the gate to close, as if spiting the monarchs who formed them would ever be considered. But it almost seemed worth it to be rid of some of these humans. Speaking of which, Captain Dragor of the 3rd Anoran Attack Fleet bade his crew make another pass of the jungle. The venomous gnat of a human that had just slipped away from their attack was in this region. The low-energy trace of the Viper-class starship made locating him troublesome. As they swooped low over the lush alien forest, scanners picked up a heat signature, and remote spectroscopes identified levoglucosan and dehydroabietic acid molecules, auto-identified as biomass combustion traces. Some 3 kilometers out from their position, and closing rapidly, was a potential site. As they closed the gap, a swathe of broken trees and charred furrows in the ground opened up, revealing a recent crash site, partially hidden by the dips and rises of the terrain. It was now uncovered, laid bare. The Anoran craft came to a near-instant stop as it dropped subspace anchors, the ship's articulated hull flexing and straining to compensate for the deceleration. Blue and red grids of energy spread out beneath it as the full range of scanners clicked into action. The scanners immediately picked up huge amounts of data from the surrounding area. A couple dozen life signs, electronics, fire, incoming. A heavy thump echoed through the control room as Dragor spun to pull up external cambers. "What is that?" he trumpeted to his crew as he saw a large moving shape on the outside of the craft. The proximity alarm had been replaced by hull damage warnings. "Shake it off! Take us to orbit, post-haste!" These bulky vessels had optimal maneuverability in outer space, where their aerodynamic weaknesses could be ignored. Still, Outer hull acceleration forces would be upwards of 30 meters per cubic second once the lift engines kicked out their compressed particles. The damage warnings persisted as the liquefied hull plating began to drop on the floor of the adjacent corridor. Dragor's wide-eyed stare of panic fixed on the glow of the deteriorating hull. The sound of the alarms and shouts of his crew muffled in the background as he fixated on the entry point. As the ship began to build velocity, a massive 5-fingered appendage, clutching a laser cutter, smashed its way into the space, soon followed by a bearded face. Dragor screamed as the mad space pirate pulled his massive bulk through into the now cramped cockpit. King's manic grin filling his vision would be his last sight, like many of his compatriots. Killian slowly traipsed into the hab deck, which would soon be his home. The large domed space had windows showing the glow of diffuse sunlight from low planetary orbit in an unfamiliar system. The dim light was supported by warm lamps mimicking Sol's golden illumination. These two sources cascaded rays onto walls resplendent with the foliage of unfamiliar plants, whose leaves and structures could almost be shrubbery and ferns from a Terran forest, but not quite. He cast his eyes onto the tiled floor and open-plan living area below these leaves. Seeing humans made his heart leap. A small group of his people reclined in various custom-built pieces of smooth, off-white furniture made from some partly transparent polymer, of all ages, genders, and cultures. They sat together in a group that looked close-knit. A few feet beyond them, a man with bulky, striated muscles easily repped pull-ups on the support bars of the above walkway. Killian cast an embarrassed glance down at his own emaciated form beneath the baggy clothing the aliens had given to him before walking over. The group turned in response to his presence, a mixture of smiles and looks of concern. A slim, mousy-looking woman with a messy ponytail stood from her bench and stepped towards him. "Hi, I'm Alex," she pointed to herself, a smile on her narrow face. "Are you okay? Do you need to sit?" I'm good. What is this place?" "The Beebody call it the Hub." Alex gestured quotation marks in the air. "It's basically a holding cell for all the humans they can collect." She shrugged. "We're dangerous," a loud voice called out from over her shoulder. "They can't have us stomping around in their system till they understand us better." The large, muscled man had dropped down and was walking through the rest of the people to where Alex and Killian stood, casually pulling on the basic t-shirt the Beebody had given them all. It was tight-fitted on him. "Yeah, it's boring, but you look like you need boring right now. Boring and a nice steak, although the latter you might struggle to get." He shook Killian's hand with a strong grip, though not overbearing. "Mad." He winked. "Took a while to get enough calories out of them, and there's not much meat. But we'll have you fed and happy before long, my man. Don't worry." Killian settled down amongst the rest of the humans, to a flurry of names, greetings, concern, and offered snacks. He could recover here. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you listening.